Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay? Can I take your picture? I'm just kidding. The camera's pointed at me right now. How you doing? Welcome to the third day of PAX. Who here has been here for all 3 days? Holy crap. A lot of you. Are you exhausted? Okay, so this is the How to Get into the Video Game Industry and Stay Relevant forum. My name's Mark PULLYBLANK. I am, anybody who wants to hear that again, PULLYBLANK. I didn't choose it. I'm like a 15-year veteran of the film industry. I'm an animator. I worked in the film industry and the game industry for about 15 years. In a little bit, we're going to bring up our esteemed panel of professionals. But first, I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about where I came from and some of the things I've learned in my journey. So, my whole deal is that I love to draw. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not very good at it. But I don't care, because the actual feel of a pen or a pencil on paper is something that I love over and above the result. And research shows that we all start that way, right? So if you give a box of crayons to a group of toddlers, aside from the odd genius that eats them, so we won't talk about the gifted kids, but the vast majority of them will happily spend their time scribbling away, completely oblivious to the fact that they aren't any good at it, right? They simply love what I love, which is the process. And then around the age of 7 or 8, we start to become precious with our work. We start to judge it. Other people start to judge it. The process starts to give way to the result. And at that crucial time, a lot of us become frustrated and intimidated, and we just quit. Can you guys all remember a time when you used to love to draw? Right? And we've even actually constructed this narrative, this false narrative, in my opinion, that states that artistic expression is reserved for those few people lucky enough to be born to it. We've all heard that, right? We maybe even said it. You know, my sister got all the talent in the family. You know what I'm saying? I just wasn't born with any talent. And this does a huge disservice in two ways. One, it completely devalues all the hard work somebody did to get good at what they do. It's kind of insulting to tell somebody, oh, you're lucky you were born talented. It's meant as a compliment, but it's kind of a dickish thing to say. And two, it gives the rest of us an out, a reason not to try. And I know this for a fact because whenever I'm out in public sketching, which isn't often because I'm not good at it and I'm shy and I don't like to be told I'm not good at it, people always come up to me and say, oh, I used to love to draw. I hear that all the time. And I say to them, what happened? And they said, I wasn't any good at it. Which is really weird because if we only did the things we were good at, we wouldn't even learn how to walk. I used to be really, really, really bad at sex, and I have 4 kids. So the point is I got better. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't those people born talented, people born with a gift or an inclination towards something. All I'm saying is that it's not the only game in town. I've had the great luck or opportunity to work on some really, really great films all over the world with some really, really talented people, some truly, truly talented people. And for me, growing up a chubby, talentless farm kid on a remote farm in Western Canada, I had no right to think that I could work alongside some of these giants. And I remember something my mother told me one time. It's not a good speech until you talk about something your mother told you sometime. I read that somewhere. So I remember something my mother told me one time. She said, you've always seemed like somebody who thinks he has something to say. Notice she said thinks. And you've always been looking for different ways to say it. And I think that's true, but I don't think that's unique. I think we all are doing that. I think we all feel good, right, when we're able to express ourselves creatively. We're all looking for those outlets. I enrolled in an animation school, and once again, it was a complete disaster. I was really, really bad at something I really wanted to get good at. For months and months and months, the only feedback I got from my efforts is that I actually was truly bad at something I really, really thought I'd be good at, something that I wanted to be good at, and at this point in time in my life, when I had a couple of kids, something I needed to be good at. I was getting so much negative feedback that it became difficult for me to pick up a pencil, a blank sheet of paper, which used to be something that I really, really loved, just filled me with anxiety. This time, the stakes seemed really high, so my shortcomings were amplified. Suddenly, the result was all that mattered. And for the first time in my life, I hated drawing, which was really, really ironic, considering I just paid all this money to learn how to do it properly. And then this really weird thing happened, or I had this sort of epiphany. I was working on this piece of animation. I was doing a traditional animation drawing, and I felt good about it. I felt like I'm getting somewhere. This is starting to work for me. I was starting to get, a little bit of wind behind my back, and I handed it in to my instructors, and a couple days I gave it back and had a big D written across it, which is, I don't know if you'd have the same thing here, but in Canada that means you suck. You might as well put an S, I guess. But it was a D, it was a failing grade, and suddenly I realized that this thing doesn't give me any helpful information at all. There's nothing in this D that does anything. In fact, it kind of takes the wind out of my sails and makes me not want to do it anymore. So I went to my instructors and I said, could you please, please, please not show me these stupid grades anymore? And they said, what? We have to grade you. We're a school. And I said, I understand, but it doesn't give me any useful information. It's actually doing the opposite. It's kind of bringing me down. And they said, well, how much better you're getting? I'm like, because I have eyes and a brain and I can see what good animation is and then I can see mine. So just give me what I need to get better at it and take this. And they said, well, what you need to get better at is you just need more time doing it. And I said, well, then don't give me a grade because I don't want to spend time doing it because you make me feel bad about it. And so they agreed. They were great. They said, okay, great. We won't give you a grade. And a few months later, I graduated. I finally looked at my grade and I finished 24th out of 26 in my class. But out of that entire class, 26 students, I was the only one who worked in film as an animator, which is weird. Should tell you something. And a few months later, I got a job working on a film. Not a great film, but it was a film. It was a start. And once again, I was surrounded by people who weren't necessarily genetically gifted. They just, like me, they loved the process. And it's really, really important to love the process when you're working overtime on Dr. Dolittle 3. That's a really important part of your workflow. So these days, as well as working in the industry, I started teaching. I teach at universities. I teach online to online students. I teach to people sitting beside me on airplanes and buses, whether they like it or not. And my students come to me for different reasons. Some of them are there because they saw Finding Nemo or Big Hero 6 and they really dug it. Some of them are there because they don't know they're not sure what they want to do with their lives, but they really, really like video games. And some of them are there because they have something to say, and this is the way they've chosen to say it. And all of them, every single one of them, sit down and they open up Maya or whatever software package you're looking at, and it's ugly, and it's gray, and it looks like math, which is probably what they're running from. And as I watch their shoulders slump to the floor and the color run out of their faces, I realize after everything that I've been through and everything that I know, that my sole job as a teacher is to simply peddle enthusiasm for the process. If I can get you over that hump, that 2-month or 3-month hump, where the only feedback you're getting is that you're really bad at something you really, really want to be good at, and I can show you why I love this and come at it with genuine enthusiasm, then maybe, just maybe, I can spur you on to keep going until it catches up with you and it becomes a sort of perpetual motion where you can't stop doing it. And then you become a weirdo like the rest of us. Because the truth is nobody has ever gotten truly great at something they didn't love to do. Yeah? Makes sense. Careers in the arts are daunting. Just even saying that admitting that you're going to go into a career in the arts invites scorn from your friends and families, from all corners of your friends and family. They tell you stuff, you'll never feed your family, it's highly competitive, it's really hard to find a job, and they're all right. Unless your work is compelling. And compelling work starts and ends with the intimate relationship we have with our craft. It's an honesty that is built from months and months and months and months of frustration, years of frustration, that can only be sustained by our love for the process, and that is the authenticity in your work that compels an audience to stop and to pay attention. So, I'm going to just finish off with this. I'm going to ask you this question. What would you do if the result didn't matter? We all have a thing, an idea. We got a sketchbook we want to fill. Makes us feel bad whenever we look at it. Oh, I should probably draw. We have a story we might want to write. We have an old musical instrument collecting dust in the back of the closet. I say dust it off. Not to be good at it, because you will not be good at it, but instead channel the child you used to be that didn't care what something looked like, who didn't care what something sounded like, but who only cared what the process felt like. All right, let's get on with the show. Thank you. All right, so we have a really, really great panel of speakers. They're all sitting down here. I'm going to introduce them. They're going to come up one by one. Let's start with Tony Reid. All right, Tony. Tony is the CEO of the Game Developers Association of Australia. He's a big, big player in bringing game development and design and all that kind of stuff to Australia, pumping it up. Hello, Tony.
Morning, Mark.
Should we applaud as we go?
Really?
Yeah. You've earned it. All right, next is Greg Hird-Rutter. Greg is from Canada, like myself. He's the senior visual effects artist at Ubisoft Montreal. He is known for Assassin's Creed, Black Flag, and he's also a mentor here at CG Spectrum. Welcome, Greg. All right, Simon Warwick. All right, come on up, Simon. Simon's worked as a senior technical cinematic animator at Rocksteady on the Batman Arkham series. I've heard of that. And he's also a mentor here at CG Spectrum. Welcome, Simon. All right, Brandon Reimchen, concept artist and illustrator known for Resident Evil, Operation Raccoon City. Is that a thing? That sounds amazing.
It was a thing, yeah.
And he's also another mentor here at CG Spectrum. Hello, Brandon. Garth Midgley. Garth is the managing director at GOATI Outsourcing, providing art and animation solutions for video games, film, and television here in Melbourne. And lastly, our very special guest is Brad Welch. He's a design director at 343 Industries. He's known for a recent game release you may have heard of called Halo 5. Yes. We're very, very lucky to have everybody here. All right, so Greg, hi, how are you?
Fantastic.
You're a visual effects artist.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool. And the thing with visual effects is I get a lot of people coming to me because there's kind of like, there's a lot of resources to learn how to animate, a lot of resources to learn how to model, but visual effects is kind of like forgotten. How did you learn how to do this thing?
Yeah, I kind of stumbled into it. I guess I've always been somebody who likes to, puzzle solve and problem solve and that kind of thing. So I didn't really have that desire to draw as much as I did to put puzzles together when I was a little kid. So that's probably how I started getting into the visual effects industry. So specifically as an effects artist, I make things explode, I make things break apart, splash around, anything like that. I've worked in film and TV, and right now I'm working in games. So I think it's really challenging to find information on how to be an effects artist. It's getting better and better. There's a lot more resources out there. So a lot of it I get online, which is a lot better, because back in the day I used to have to get like a textbook every time a new version of the software would come out. You get this fat textbook and kind of...
Are you any good at reading those?
Back in the day I was pretty good.
My God, I'd rather take a bullet than read one of those things.
Yeah.
I'm really just hunting peck, and then like the manuals are really, really challenging.
Yeah, they are. So one of the reasons I wanted to get into teaching was because I've learned a lot by watching a lot of these videos of other people, demonstrating various aspects of effects. So I also wanted to contribute to that. So it's really cool now that there's a much stronger community for learning and educating than there used to be. Like, it used to be you would work in a company, you'd have your supervisor, he was your main sort of source of knowledge, and now it's kind of spread out to you have the whole world as your source of knowledge.
One of the questions that and I'll just throw this out to the table, one of the questions that I get asked a lot from young people, from people who are studying, and I think I always say the hardest job you can ever have is looking for a job, because you will literally do anything other than that job. You'll literally do almost anything. I don't know about you guys. But the second hardest job, I would say, is being a student, because you just don't know where this thing's going to take you. You have a specific goal, but it's sort of open-ended. So a question I get asked a lot from students mainly, but from other professionals as well, is what do you do when you just can't stand doing this anymore? Do you guys have any sort of, because we've all felt it, right? We've all been burnt out at different stages of our career.
Yeah, for me, or what I would say to a student who's in the same situation, is I would try to think about what it is you're doing all of this for. If you're someone who's trying to complete your studies, look at the types of studios that you want to work at, the types of projects you want to work on, and have this goal in sight. For me, when I've worked on some projects that have been really grueling, and knowing that I'm going to produce something at the end of it that I'm really proud of. And the more you go through that process, the more you realize it's a normal part of the creative process, is hitting this point. Usually it's about 2/3 of the way through where you're just like, oh my God, I want to quit, I want to do something else, whatever. But knowing that this is something that happens makes it easier to go through. Almost any project that I start on, there's some stages. When I first start, I'm super excited and can't, every day is an adventure. And then towards the end, 2/3 in, you start running into problems. No matter how hard you plan, no matter what you do, there's always stuff that comes up and you have to grind through it. But then you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's what I concentrate on. And at the end, knowing what you've done, knowing what you've worked on, and being proud of something, there's not a lot of careers out there where you're able to input that amount of creativity into your work. So.
Thank you. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Brad?
I actually have a specific case of that for design. This might apply to the other disciplines. But I got to a point where I was in my early 30s and had again, same thing, particularly grueling project. And one thing I used to do a lot as a designer is deconstruct games all the time. And I got to the end of this project, and not only was I kind of burnt out from the work, I found I wasn't enjoying playing games at all anymore. And it was killing me inside, because I still, I love games at the time, but I couldn't enjoy playing them. So I actually mentally, and I've maintained it to this day, is I took a mental break from that, and I just don't do that anymore. You sort of have to switch off something in your brain from doing it. So I just kind of try and get into the zone and play games, and I don't think about them. I don't sit there. I don't stop and take notes, because it's easy to do that, but you totally lose sight of what's the inspiration, or what's the passion in this game that you're playing, or what's the interesting thing that's happening there, and you get totally mechanically kind of caught up in it. And that it's actually not a good thing to take away from a game, because you don't know what went into making that game. You don't know why the decisions are made, so you might not even be taking the right deconstruction notes away from it. So I think if you're getting to that gridlock of gaming just is something that if it starts to feel like a chore, you got to find a way to make it not a chore and make it fun again, and try and kind of reset. And working on games can sort of exacerbate that problem. I think everyone, you hear a lot of people say, I used to love games when I was young and I'm not so much into it anymore. And I think it's an ebb and flow, but you have to be kind of careful that you get too mechanical about how you appreciate games.
Yeah, go ahead, Garth.
Yeah, I've got an example, probably quite a good one, I think. I've done some sessional teaching at RMIT for a multimedia design course, and that meant I just got to rock up once a week between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. or something. It's really cool for me. I could just rock up and see what's kind of going on. And what I noticed from the start of the year to the end of the year, this major project was something that the students designed, and then did the storyboard, and then did the modeling, and then did the animation, did all this stuff for. And they get to about the two-thirds of the way through, and they'll start to really doubt and question, is this any good? And because I wasn't a regular teacher, they would come to me and say, look, it was mostly a bit of a a session on can I get a job and am I any good and what am I doing? And at those points, I really tried to, I think it's good for them to get my feedback in that sense. Like probably if you do get to that point, get some feedback from people around you, and even reach out to industry people because they have a lot of insight and people are generally pretty happy to help, you know. And yeah, I'll just deconstruct what they're doing and just speak to them about trying to find the fun that you mentioned before. Like what is it about this process that you like, you know? So one student, for example, was having a lot of trouble getting these things to animate, and she was like animating these objects to some music and stuff. And I said, look, you're struggling with the bones and the rigging, the weighting, and it's tying you down. Don't just animate these objects as just with standard rotation. And it worked. And she was like, oh my God, like you just removed this hard thing and now I'm enjoying it again. So
yeah, it's almost like overthinking it is a problem.
Exactly.
I think one of the big things that somebody explained to me one time, and I realized I was doing it anyhow, is always leave your work when you feel good about it. Because if you leave your work when you're like, screw it, and you're just frustrated and you shut it down, it just becomes that much more difficult to sit back down and do it again. Unless, of course, you're getting paid for it. Then you get hungry and you get back at it. Listen, we're going to keep talking up here, but there's a couple microphones left and right. We're going to open it to the Q&A. Come on up and join the conversation. We have about 50 minutes left here, so it would be nice to hear from some of you. Sure. Come on up.
Hi. I've been in software development for about 9 years, finance, and I just started my own indie studio about a year ago in New York City. One of the main issues I've been finding is looking for clients. I've mostly kind of been looking on the internet, Reddit, Craigslist, that sort of thing. What's a good place to find clients and approach them and keep them?
You're pretty best suited.
Everyone's
That's
deferring.
a really tough question, actually. As I said, when we started GOATI outsourcing, it was a case of I had some of the most talented artists and animators in the world unemployed. I'm like, this is really terrible, but at the same time, it's an opportunity, and I just sort of made a call, and since then, that's just followed on with further work. So I think one of the most important things, like as a secondary thing afterwards, is like when you get a client, do a really good job. Like I work often harder for my clients than I'm doing my own projects because I want to impress them, right? And if you impress one person, they'll start passing your name around, right? So you don't have to worry about finding, I don't think, millions of clients to keep yourself busy. Just find like a client that you think that your skills are suited to. Reach out, let them know what you can do, why you can do it well. Speak to them about like what their problems are. So research a company before you speak to them and find out like understand their business, and then try to see how you can improve their business or the experience that they want to have with their customers or whatever it may be. If you can solve their problems that they don't even know that they have yet, they'll take you on, and then just do the best job you can, like work hard.
Would you say too, Garth, that it's important to use the word no? I know for me when I
Yes.
freelance, sometimes
Yeah.
I take on too many jobs and I do kind of a half-assed job of all of them, trying to please too many people.
That's true, but this is a really tricky one though too, because I started this studio, the GOATI outsourcing, when I'd already had 12, 13 years in the games, experience in the games industry. So I knew what it took to make a project, which I don't know how much experience you've had with games, what sort of projects you want to take on, but in terms of saying no, you can say no to future work and not take on too much, but at the same time you need to say no to a client when they ask for certain things that you know will ruin that experience, and you need to construct that conversation in a way that you show that you're helping them. You say, look, I can do this, but this is going to suffer, it's going to take this much time, and this is how much it will cost. How about we do this other thing instead? So just if they're trying to ask for too much, for too little money, then pare it back, but try to give them another solution, show them how your solution is better for them.
In a word, diplomacy, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, like another good example perhaps, we're working on, I was the lead artist on Transformers, it was Transformers Revenge of the Fallen with Activision. And there was a day that I wasn't at the office, and it was the studio manager, the art director and the producer talking to them about some features. They want to switch some levels out and switch some things around. I got into the office the next day and they told me the decision. I was like, no, there's no way we're doing that. Like, this is not going to work. And they're like, well, you have to tell Activision. I'm like, great, like, let's have the call, right? And so we had this meeting with them, and my team, like the studio manager and everyone, were like nervous as hell. But I said, look, the reason why I can't do that is it's going to take this long. We're going to have these problems. This is the technical problems we're going to have. That's why the level I had that you wanted to change was good, because we can do that in 2 weeks, because we're going to use this kit bash thing and it's going to be fast and it's going to be a good experience. And they were like, oh my God, thank you so much. I'm glad you told us. Because if we had done the other one, we would have missed the deadline, we would have failed. So, yeah.
So
cool.
would you advise approaching these companies directly?
Hang on, sorry to cut you off. We just got a big line. I got to jump back and forth. We're going to be around afterwards. You can hit it. Go ahead.
Hi guys. So for people looking to break into the industry, networking, what works and what doesn't in your experience?
Network, and I'd like to sort of add to that is who you know or how good your work is. Where are the importance on that? So
Your work has to be
Yeah,
good.
I think your work is good, and the better your work is, the more people you'll know. So concentrating on getting your work to a high quality is an easy way to get to know people. And having a really good portfolio online, something that's really easy for people to see and look up, is really key.
I would say as well, to add to that, is that now you have Facebook, Twitter, you have way more things at your disposal to get involved in the community. And don't go there just like asking for a job. Just be a part of it, get your name out there, become known, and then let your work start speaking for itself. And you'll find that the junior opportunities start to come up. But you have to be ready for it, right? You have to be prepared for it, and then you'll find that they start hitting.
Show off.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and just emails generally. Just send your emails out with your folios that you said. Just send them out to everyone, and just let them know too that you're interested in critical feedback if they're not interested in your work, because you want to. That's a perfect opportunity to find out why you're not hitting the mark.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Go ahead.
So you've been talking a lot about animators and effects artists and all that kind of end of it. What about the more like the narrative, the writer kind of end of it? What would your be recommendations of getting into that kind of side of it be?
Well, I know I can speak to...
Specifically, like, I'm sorry, just to cut you off, just to add a bit more. I'm specifically looking into making indie games.
Right. I'm not a writer, but a friend of mine, she used to work in the effects industry, and she went to Telltale for writing, just based off of her writing examples, and I think she cold called them, or I'm sure she networked. But again, it's a case of getting your work in front of the right eyes, and the work being good.
Tony, thank you, Brendan. Working with young companies and young game companies, is there a difference between the two? Are there writers and programmers, or are they all one of the same? Like you have a programmer who has an idea or a developer who has an idea?
It's a combo. There are those people who can do it all, and across the road, for example, is two guys, three. But in your particular case, I think really follow writers who have done what it is you want to do, and there are so many online resources now. As Greg was saying, just track down, find out what they did. I mean, writing for games is a unique thing. Doing narrative for games is tough, and you would know this. But it's so specific, especially in indie. There's not a lot of opportunities in the indie space to do it, unless you have your story to tell and you need to bring your team or a team around yourself. But it's not one of those things that you're going to leap into. There's no industry ready for writers right now, especially in indie.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's a visual medium, not really a written medium. So I think it's a good idea to find an indie game developer somewhere and just go talk to them and say, can we do a proof of concept for this? And then see if you can get some speed around that.
Can I add as well, you can do things that are different but similar. Like my lead into the games industry was I wanted to draw, but I didn't know how to do it. As in, I knew how to draw, but I didn't know how to get into the industry. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was going to be an architect, and that freaked me out. So I applied. I was a writer, and I quit. I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to do art, So I did a comic book. So I wrote it. I'm a very average writer, but I wrote it because I wanted to draw. I just needed a platform to draw onto. And then I showed that to a games company and got a job as a concept artist, right? So if it's hard to get a team around you, maybe look at other things that you can do easily yourself, like maybe a web comic series or some sort of thing, and
Twine.
you know, things that you can
Jump into
accessibly
Twine.
get into. Yeah.
Yep. Get twined.
Great.
Do your own thing.
Yep.
Cutting you guys off. Cool. Go ahead. You got a
Yes.
line.
I was just wondering, do you think it's possible to get into like the mainstream AAA games industry from Australia? And if not, what advice would you give to people who want to get into the industry but don't necessarily want to leave Australia and like move?
I mean, it's definitely possible to get into the AAA games industry. Different countries have different challenges, but you know, it's global now. There's plenty of studios around the world. Like I said earlier, the US is a bit challenging to get into at times just because of immigration stuff there, but it's not impossible. People do it. You know, I work with a few Australians over there. I think like the biggest thing is you kind of need some sort of track record, and so you have to. I mean, at the very least, as you know, coming in, it's so easy to build stuff now. There's so many tools to build games in. If you've actually gone out and built something yourself, and it's a good demo, certainly from the gameplay side. We'll take a look at it. AAA is super specialized. So, for instance, when we look at design candidates, we're looking for someone who wants to work on a shooter. We don't tend to look further afield than that because there is enough that they have to learn in that space. That we want people who, you know, you can go out and get like Unreal Engine or something like that and build levels. There's enough to learn just in that space that it's a specialized job. That totally doesn't apply to indie or smaller studios, but for us and most, I think, AAA studios, trying to find the thing that's closest to what you want to work on and finding tools that let you build that kind of content. And then ideally, if you can find a way to build it, release it, and actually get it up for download somewhere so people can play it, get feedback, and actually, if you can go through the loop of being able to show, here's how I designed this thing, here's how I built it, I got it into people's hands, here's what the feedback was, and now I did another iteration on that based on that feedback. That's the process by which we make games in big studios, really, in a nutshell. And having just that understanding would put you ahead of like 90% of candidates, to be honest. A lot of people come in with less than that. So I think if you can, you know, if you're from another country, so you're from Australia going to another country, if you can stand out early, you've got a chance. It's challenging as your first thing out. You're probably going to have to ship something here, but I don't think it's impossible.
You can do it.
It sort of ties in with what you just said, but I'm studying programming at the moment, and we've got teachers, we've got a lot of incubator people who have their own companies and stuff, and you have sort of two sides of the same coin. Like, we've got teachers saying that big companies are great, and then we've got indie students that saying they're really bad and they stifle creativity. How do you make that distinction between what you want to do? Because both are so hard to get into. Like, as you said, the indie people, when they go out hiring, they generally know who they're going to hire. They know what's going on. AAA companies want experience, and you can't get experience because you can't get hired. It just seems like one of those things that's really hard to do. And since I'm coming to the end of my course, it's sort of something that's sort of plaguing me a bit at the moment.
I mean, ultimately, I think you just have to make something. I mean, I think most people are in the industry. You go through that early on, that thought process, but I think there's plenty of different barriers at all different scales of development, and everyone who makes games has to push through that. It could be financial things, it could be creative things. You might not get to make the thing you want all the time, sometimes you do. And so that roadblock that you have at the start doesn't ever go away, it might change shape a bit. And so I think the best thing early on is to make something for yourself and make something that you think is excellent and make the thing that you're passionate about. And people will see that, and you know, and there's a lot of people doing that, so you have to kind of rise to the top. But I think trying to jump in because you don't have experience, you have to kind of earn that yourself, I guess. You can't. It's not going to come to you. So I think like you really need to go out and make something and learn from that process. You learn so much from making something and shipping something that you can't study it. You can't learn it at school. You have to do it.
Well, listen, thank you all for showing up. Thank you to our panel.